going to do further research on those. We stayed in the diner for about 2 long hours, exchanging stories and ideas. He jotted things down quickly, and by the time I had finished talking to him, he had about half a notebook filled with notes and drawings. Dave said he had enough and thanked me for taking the time to talk to him. He said he would stay in touch, and if there were other sightings in the area, to call him and let him know. He gave me his business card with his contact information, and I gave him mine. Without wasting a moment, I readied my bow, nocked an arrow, and made a swift exit from the deer blind. I made a beeline away from the disturbance, not daring to look back. But here's the kicker. As I emerged from the woods, heading towards my trusty vehicle parked approximately 25 yards away, I heard it again. That gibberish hollering was still silent of anything. No movement, no figure lurking amidst the trees. It was as if I was being pursued by a ghost. Finally, I reached my truck, my heart pounding in my chest. I quickly released my bowstring without letting the arrow loose, and placed my bow carefully in the back seat of my Suburban. I fired up the engine, and I wasted no time. I ran back into my house and told my housekeeper what had happened, and then she agreed to go outside with me to check out the area. When she saw the wreckage of the birdhouse, she knew I was telling the truth. We called the police, but they claimed it was merely a large stray dog. I didn't appreciate how they tried to convince me I had mistaken the sighting. It wasn't until after that day that I started hearing creepy noises in the night. They sounded like someone was whimpering in pain. I sold that house 4 years ago, and I moved to the Northeast to be closer to my granddaughter and other family. I regularly read about Bigfoot, and I wonder if I'll ever see another one before I die. I can still vividly recall my Bigfoot experience like it was yesterday. Point at the top of its head. It didn't make any sounds. I thought it was just curious about us. At first, I thought it was a real-life Chewbacca. Thinking back on it now, I realize it wasn't Chewbacca. But when you're a kid with an overactive imagination, anything can happen. The creature was about 6 feet tall and just stood in the yard looking into the house. I put my toy over by the propane tank, propping it up so the hairy creature could see it if it came back this way. I had hoped that it would find it and realize I just wanted to be friends. The next morning, I was the first one up, and I raced out the door. I ran over to the propane tank, and I looked for my toy, but it was gone. It disappeared into the night. I never found out what happened to it all of those years later. I held out hope that the Bigfoot found us as any teenagers would. This is probably where I should mention that my girl had a cat that they called Gretchen. The reason I've never forgotten that name is because of what happened next. So we're lying on this squeaky mattress, and I thought I heard someone whispering outside the room. I knew that she only had one brother, who didn't even live in state, only much, much hairier. If you've ever seen the movie The Goonies, there's this character who they call Sloth. Honestly, this guy reminded me of that character. Also, I should probably mention, I'm not the smallest of guys. Of course, I weighed less back then than I do now, but I was still about 6'2", and somewhere around 200. I thought that this kind of cryptid only roamed in the state of California and the Pacific Northwest. I was under the impression that her dad made her believe that they were nothing but a bunch of homeless people that lived in the woods. Believe me, these were not regular people. It was only years later, when I watched the show Finding Bigfoot, that I learned these creatures have been seen in many other parts of the country. The only time I went back to her house after that was on one occasion to pick her up during the day. We broke up not to be one of the most stunning bodies of water I've ever seen. My parents helped grow my passion for camping, starting from a very young age, and I wanted to do the same for my daughter Kirsten. Her mother, who had already become my ex-wife, was a bit nervous about me taking our little girl out there, but I assured her everything would be just fine. Kirsten was only 9, so I could understand waking up like that was the weirdest feeling. I didn't have the slightest clue regarding what happened, but I quickly put the confusion aside, and all I could think about was my daughter's whereabouts. I rushed out of the tent, and I didn't see anyone or anything unusual. I ran to my SUV, and I felt so fortunate to see my daughter in the back seat, curled up in a fetal position. She looked terrified, and I noticed in my presence, and I just stood there and watched it eat. Suddenly the creature stopped eating and returned its eyes to me. It then started shouting at the sky. It made a loud, guttural sound that I had never heard before, which was very unpleasant to my ears. Fortunately, I got in my car to help muffle the noise, and as soon as I did, the creature started running circles around it. I couldn't believe how quickly it covered the distance between us. It waved its hands in the air while shouting like a lunatic. Something about it reminded me of a clinically insane. It's still so strange to think that there are large, hairy apes in the forests of North America. There have been so many reports of grassman sightings in Ohio, but no one has ever been able to provide indisputable evidence of their existence. I look forward to the day that changes. It will shock the world when it does, and I hope I'm still around to see that. Inside. Because of the matted hair that flowed from the creature's head, my first reaction was that it was just an older hippie woman. I thought that maybe I had accidentally taken a dip in her regular spot. Without saying a word, she began to swim towards me using a frog kick motion. It didn't take very long for my heart to start racing. I noticed that it wasn't a person that was approaching me, at least not any kind of person that I had ever seen. I nearly gagged as I turned my face to her. The most atrocious body odor that I had ever smelled filled my... I thought I would have heard footsteps or a splash when she entered the river and swam off, but I had heard nothing at all. She had just vanished like a ghost. I must have stayed in that locked vehicle for another 30 minutes at least before I heard another car pull up and park not too far from mine. I watched as a couple of fishermen began to unload their equipment from the vehicle. When I felt like I was out of their general line of sight, I worked up enough courage to get out. I must have been hallucinating. Eventually, I came to my senses and started to walk back to my car. And I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see the creature, once again, come charging back out of the woods at any moment. I finally made it to my car and then I got in. I started the engine and drove away, but I couldn't help but stare in the rearview mirror. I expected to see the creature following me, but it never did. I drove home in a trance-like state. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. I tried to think of anything that could have caused it. It grabbed it between its jaws and ran straight back up the steep barricades before dropping down onto the other side.
Kiehl's Ultra Facial Cream goes deep for fast repair and peak hydration.
The noise I had ever heard. It almost sounded demonic. We sped off without ever looking back. Years later, I wondered whether it could be the same Bigfoot that I had heard years earlier. In fact, we were only several hundred yards from where my first experience had taken place. My dad told me that there was no such thing as a Bigfoot. A few years later, one of my dad's good friends told him about an encounter that he had in the early about 50 feet out into the yard. One of my friends went hunting one day on Clinch Mountain, and there were 3 of them in one truck. It was bow season, so they arrived and parked in a field, and then they agreed that if anyone gets one to blow the horn, they all would come to help whoever needed it. At about 20 minutes after daylight, my friend told me that someone was just laying on the horn, and they just kept blowing it. So everyone came out of the woods.
Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, January 9th. Finishing up out here. Did some chest and some back. Barbell incline. Some rows. That's pretty good work, man. Feel like I'm making pretty good progress. I actually feel like I feel a little bigger, you know what I'm saying? I can't look in the mirror at this point and be like, damn, I'm a lot bigger. I feel like I've gotten a little bigger, you know. So we're gonna keep on that path. And then when it comes time to set foot on Misery Road, which is the diet, you know, we just travel down Misery Road, and on the other side, we nice and shredded and jacked. But, you know, you gotta take it one day at a time. For a little while, I really kind of didn't feel like coming out here, man. It's kind of bad weather today. You know, it's one of them days you kind of want to sit around and, you know, not do shit. But, you know, you got to commit yourself and dedicate yourself to something, man. You know, even if it's a hobby. First and foremost, if you're a family man, you should dedicate and commit yourself to your wife and your children, and your family. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about as far as like just something you like doing. I don't know. I'm not one to tell nobody what to do, how to live their life, but I don't know, man. If you want to get results out of something and you kind of like doing it, and you kind of like the results that you could possibly get from doing it, why not? You know, just do it, man. Easier said than done a lot of times, but hey, coming out here, not just for me, for any man, I feel like this is good for a man. You know, I'm not trying to push you know, call nobody like, you don't lift weights, you're a goddamn, you know. It's not about that, man. Sometimes, you know, you just need to take your mind off of things, or sometimes you're just in a foul mood, or you're depressed for whatever fucking reason. These weights are always here, man. You just come and take out whatever you want on them. It can be therapy. I mean, some days it's therapy for me. Some days, you know, most days it's just something I enjoy doing. I like fucking doing it. But it's good for me, you know, and I think it's good for every young man to do. Even, you know, some women too, you know. I'm not telling women they can't lift weights. I ain't that guy, you know. But I don't want to get too long on a rant here today, man. I guess I did start my ab work today. I'm not gonna film none of that. You don't want to fucking see that. But this week here, which was yesterday, started the week. I started my ab work doing where I'm gonna be. You know, I want to get some visible abs. You know, and I'm just not sure if I'm ever gonna be the strict guy that just shreds every ounce of fat. You know, and just, you know, I do pretty good on my diet and everything, but I figured, you know, my abs are almost fucking visible. You know, during last year, during the prime months, you know. How about they're just like any other fucking muscle. Let's just get them a little bigger, you know, and then we shred down a little bit, and bitches are popping out maybe. We'll see. That's what I'm thinking now, though. So my ab exercises as of now, what I'm starting on in this little chunk of time called the journey to Misery Road. It's gonna be weighted ab exercises. I got the decline sit-ups, weighted with my 20-pound fucking medicine ball, and I also got other exercise I do. I lay flat on my back. They call them leg raises, I suppose. I don't know. You lay flat on your back, just lifting your legs up, bring your ass in off the floor. Not using momentum though, using your stomach muscle. I got 20-pound ankle weights, so I do those. So try to do those about at least 3 days out the week. Maybe those will increase and kind of pop them ab muscles on out. But yeah, man, this is way longer than I usually talk. Let me get on out of here. Good thing, you know, I'm done with every fucking thing. I can just go in there and do this video and take me a shower and relax the rest of the night. So, you know, that's that for tonight. Y'all take it easy.